Bradley Beal leaves the Suns, but he stays warm. Did joining the LA Clippers make them better or worse? Joel Embiid has a lot of thoughts on what you think about him and how the Sixers have treated him. And Zion Williamson gets his deal guaranteed for now, but is he a part of the Pelicans core? I'll ask Wes and Haize all of that and more today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are free. We are available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances today with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I'm Doug Branson, host of Locked On Hornets and your Shot Clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories every day with the help of Locked On's local experts. And I have two of the best with me, as always, from the Locked On Heat podcast, sitting in for Matt Moore. Once again, it's Wes Goldberg. Wes?
Don't have as much inside intel as Matt, but I think it's been a good week for hair on Locked On NBA.
It's always a great week. Some people have it, some people don't, and it's beautiful either way. From the Locked On Bulls podcast, we've got Haize. Haize.
How's everybody doing today? I can guarantee you one thing, that today's episode of Locked On NBA is going to be more exciting than any of the Summer League games today. How about that?
All right, I like that prediction. We start today with the biggest news in the NBA. It's Klay Thompson and Megan Thee Stallion. They are officially official. I'm kidding. It's Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal has been bought out by the Suns and is signing on with the LA Clippers. He reportedly prioritized basketball fit over anything else. He said in January that he still believes he is a starter in the league. If he starts for the Clippers, does that make them better or worse? Let's hear from Jackson Gatland on today's edition, or I guess last night's edition, of Locked On NBA Game Night.
It was bought in on the Bradley Beal addition under the premise that maybe he'd buy into a somewhat lesser role, maybe coming off the bench, being that supplemental bench scoring need that that the Clippers would like to have to help both James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. But I don't like this dynamic of him stepping in as the third banana, because you're bringing in a guy who is a non-defensive, non-connective shooting guard. Like he's a scorer. That's what he does. That's what he does at the highest level. He's not an elite playmaker. He doesn't really elevate his teammates in that regard, I don't believe. And he's not a great defensive piece. And I don't like it. I don't like that you're bringing him in to be this, the third piece to, James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. I think it functioned a lot better when they had role players who kind of specialize in their supplementary roles around those two star players.
What do you think, Haize? Is Jackson selling Bradley Beal a little bit short here? Did the Beal acquisition make the Clippers better, worse, or no change?
I mean, I think it does make them better in the sense that you have a talent that can absolutely fill it up. Like, he's going to have to buy into his role, absolutely. But I think the narrative now, or the way that Bradley Beal's talked about, is if he's like some net negative player that they can't help a team. I just don't agree with that. I think Bradley Beal still has a little bit left in the tank. The Clippers can use every bit of the help that they can get, especially with, we don't know exactly how many games Kawhi is going to play any given year, so you're going to need as much firepower as possible. You lost a lot of your offensive firepower with Norman Powell out of there as well. So I like this acquisition for the Clippers quite a bit, actually.
I think it's probably no change, but I agree with Haize. We're acting like Bradley Beal is some sort of as a distressed asset at this point. Let's remember 2 years ago, before the Suns were actively reducing his role and trying to make him miserable so that he would accept a trade, he averaged 18 points per game while shooting 43% from three. That's the kind of player that tends to have success playing off of guys like James Harden, who can create three-pointers, playing off of a guy like Kawhi, who can create threes out of the post and things like that. But let's be real here. Let's look at what the Clippers are actually doing. I don't think they're adding Bradley Beal in order to try to improve things. I disagree with Jackson. I don't think they're even looking at him as the third banana at this point. That's my guy Zoo, who we talked about yesterday. That's the third banana on the Clippers. They still have all the role players, right? They still have the Derrick Jones Jr.'s and guys like that. They just replaced Norm Powell with Bradley Beal, one scoring guard for another one. The difference in what they are doing now is that they're getting Bradley Beal at 2 years, $11 million, as opposed to Norm Powell, who had wanted the extension beyond the summer of 2027, which we all know is when the Clippers want their max flexibility. Harden's contract comes up that summer, and so does Kawhi's contract. So they bring in Beal at a cheap contract, one that comes off the books and aligns with Kawhi and Harden. They're maintaining their flexibility while not taking a dramatic step back after having to trade away Norm Powell.
Wouldn't this be a different conversation, Wes, if Denver, had been in the Western Conference Finals and been one step away from the final? I mean, they got bounced from the first round. So, I think it's tough to look at any kind of change and say, well, that's going to definitely make them worse when, they have expectations that go far beyond the first round.
The Clippers? Yeah, I think they definitely want to go beyond the first round. But everything with them, it starts and it ends with Kawhi Leonard. If he's healthy, they can go far. With or without Bradley Beal, with or without Norm Powell, it doesn't matter. If Kawhi is healthy and playing at his apex, that's the big swing factor for the Clippers.
Yeah, Haize, can Bradley Beal really have that big an effect on a team with two stars like that, or that big of a negative effect?
Negative. It's possible to have a negative effect. It's always possible. But I think one thing about coming here to the Clippers, his role is going to be more defined. He's actually going to be playing with point guards, right? He's going to be able to play with guards that can actually distribute the ball, which was one of the biggest things that hurt him with the Phoenix Suns. So I think I'm not saying that Bradley Beal is going to come in and make the Clippers this more amazing, like Western Conference Finals contender or anything like that. But you already had a void after losing Norman Powell. You get Bradley Beal, who's cheaper and aligns more with, if you do need to change your direction, everybody's up at that point in time, so you can pivot at that point in time. I love this move for the Clippers. And I don't usually say good things about the Clippers. I like this move for the Clippers.
Player option on the second year for Beal, so gives him some flexibility to get into the free agency market, gives an opportunity at least for the Clippers to clear some things up. Let's flip it to the Suns angle on this. Beal is going to give back $14 million of his deal to the Suns, and the Suns will likely stretch the remainder, which should take them out of any kind of apron territory, allow them some flexibility to make some more moves around the edges. But the question is, Haize, should they have done this now, or were they better off waiting another season before they made this kind of maneuver?
No, go ahead and get it done now. You get them out of there now. You not only get under the second tax apron, but you're under the first tax apron now. You regain your ability to use some of your mid-level exception, and you can make more trades now. You free up draft picks down the road that you can trade if you decide to make a move. I think this was the right time for the Suns to move this. After you made the KD trade, you move off Bradley Beal. You make your direction more clear now. And I think the Suns quietly, all things kept, have had a pretty solid offseason at course correcting. Now we got to see how they're going to fill out in between the lines there.
I agree with Haize. I think it's been a solid offseason for them after their moves over the last several years sort of blow up in their face. But not only do they get below the first and second apron, which increases all that kind of flexibility, they also unfreeze their draft assets going forward by doing that, right? They were so far deep into the second apron for so long that their first round picks were on the brink of being frozen, and they reset the clock on that now too. So they become, in essence, a real basketball team with a front office that can actually do real things, and they don't have to go these crazy lengths to try to do stuff. Now, they only have Devin Booker. That is the only star on the team. They're probably, I would not expect this roster to make the playoffs this year, but you look at the roster that the Suns rode to the 2021 NBA Finals. It was Booker with a lot of homegrown stars, or homegrown players rather. And that's sort of what they are at least setting themselves up to do again. Who knows if it actually works, but it's one thing to have Beal and Durant and Booker on your books and just try to find role players to take veteran minimums and fit around them. Now they've gotten a bunch of young guys. These guys are on rookie scale contracts. That $19 million of dead cap money isn't going to hurt as much for them as it would for, say, a team like Milwaukee right now that isn't built around those young players. The Suns have created some flexibility despite the fact that they have the dead cap hit on the books.
Okay, so you both are very nice about the way they've unwinded this and their future prospects. But when you zoom out and you get retrospective and you think about actually just making the trade for Bradley Beal, everything that they had to give up, and now having to waive and stretch this, Wes, was Bradley Beal worth the swing? And when you think about some of the worst trades in NBA history, how close does this one for Bradley Beal, the one to acquire, the Suns acquiring Bradley Beal, how close does that one get to the top?
Well, it's not the Luka trade, and it's not what the Pelicans just did in the first round this past summer, but it's pretty bad because you look at what it really cost them. It cost them 2 years of Devin Booker's prime, which is tough. And it cost them, you could argue, Kevin Durant. Had they never made the trade for Bradley Beal, they wouldn't have been this deep into the second apron, had a star making $50 million with a no trade clause, this much lack of flexibility. There's a chance if they never make the Beal trade, Kevin Durant is still in Phoenix playing alongside Devin Booker with a better cast of role players, something maybe that looks a little bit more close to what the Clippers are doing, right? With 2 stars and building around those 2 max star players. So it's bad. It's bad. And for people that were paying attention in the moment, it was bad.
Haize.
Yeah, it's a bad deal. I mean, I think that trade, it's not the worst. I think the Dame Lillard trade, I still put above that. I think, especially with more money on the books and less results there. But it was a bad trade, and it was a trade that at the time I don't think really anybody thought that they should have been making. Like, I get it that you want to do something, you want to add the most talent, but hopefully they've learned from this now. They learned the importance of having balance on your roster. You can't just throw a bunch of scorers out there. There's no real balance and expect that it was going to work, and that's what they tried to do. They had no real point guard. Their big rotation was always questionable while they had that team there. Now, they've at least shored up and got more direction on the bigs. Still need a point guard, though. So hopefully they're still in the process of learning from it.
Yeah, I guess it's going to be judged more on how much the Suns have learned from all of this. And if they repeat those mistakes later on down the line, with all of these stars that are going to be available over the next couple of seasons, we will see. One more trade that's probably worse is the Nets deal that brought in Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. That one's
up there.
That one might be the top. I don't know. Let us know what you think on YouTube, youtube.com/@LockedOnNBA. One more fun fact, courtesy of Law Murray. Bradley Beal is the 3rd ex-Washington Wizards player after John Wall and Russell Westbrook. They got traded to the Western Conference, reached a buyout agreement after losing their starting role to join the LA Clippers. So how about
the Clippers have a type.
All right, coming up on a Locked On NBA, much more show ahead. Joel Embiid, he has a lot of thoughts, and he shared them with ESPN in a huge profile that really uncovered a lot of the tension between him and the 76ers franchise. We'll get into that and much more here on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Open Phone. If you're running a business like I do, every missed call could be a missed opportunity. Think about it. The last time that you had a service emergency, did you wait for a call back? I'm going to guess probably not. That's why you need Open Phone. It's the #1 business phone system that streamlines your customer communication and helps you scale. All from an app that's on your phone or your computer. I love that I don't need to carry 2 phones, just one phone with the Open Phone app. I can manage business calls, my text, all from that app, whether I'm at my desk or I'm out on the go. And my favorite feature is the shared inbox. It lets my whole team jump into any conversation without missing a beat. Plus, the AI call transcripts and summaries, they are absolute game changers for staying on top of follow-ups and those vital customer interactions that mean money ultimately. And right now, Open Phone is offering our listeners 20% off your first 6 months. Just go to openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you're switching from another provider, they'll even port your number for free. Open Phone. No missed calls, no missed customers. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. ESPN's Dotun Akintoye has a very detailed and impeccably written profile of Joel Embiid up now on ESPN.com. I'll link it in the show notes for those that haven't read it yet. It's absolutely worth your time. Wes and Haize, I hope you've had a chance to read it because I want to know how your views on Joel Embiid have been clarified, solidified, or changed after hearing from Embiid on all of the narratives surrounding him from fans, from pundits, all of the injuries and all of the controversy that has filled his career. Wes, we're going to start with you. What's the most interesting thing that you took away from this piece, and how has it affected your views of Joel Embiid as a player?
Well, I enjoyed the profile a lot. It was at the same time sympathetic without letting Joel Embiid off the hook. And, I think based on what we've learned in that profile, it's a borderline miracle that Joel Embiid has had the career that he's even had, right? Regardless of if this is the end or not for him as a superstar player. Early on in his career, it felt like even the 76ers were divided on whether or not they thought Joel Embiid could be a superstar player or not, whether or not they wanted to invest the time in Joel Embiid or not. And that situation matters a lot. And at the same time, it felt like Embiid was where the 76ers routinely got in his way. Embiid was getting in his way as well, right? There was a lot of lessons that I think Embiid could have learned early in his career that he did not learn from, which also set himself up for some of the injuries and things like that, going out there when he probably shouldn't have. And things that he's very open about in terms of, whether or not he pushed himself a little bit too far and how much at risk that put him at this stage in his career health-wise. So I think, again, it was sympathetic, but it didn't let Joel Embiid off the hook. And if this is the end for Joel Embiid as a superstar player, I think we could look back on his career and still be pretty amazed that this guy won an MVP in 2023 and had the kind of career that he did, and is frankly still with the 76ers at this point in his career, based on just how split things were early in his career and all the injuries that he was dealing with.
Yeah, things like this, I always appreciate learning and reading about a player when they get a chance, opportunity to open up, and you kind of get to see what goes on in their head and things like that. Like Joel Embiid is a good guy. He's a good guy that does care about basketball. You can tell that some of this stuff has gotten to him over the years, some of the narrative things. I think specifically the leadership thing definitely stood out, especially this past year with the whole thing with him and Tyrese Maxey in the locker room and stuff like that. So overall, like when we look back at Joel Embiid, it's always going to be the what if, the woulda, coulda, shoulda. What if he was able to stay healthy? What if he was healthy more in the playoffs? Those type of things with his career. But Joel Embiid's put together a damn good career, all that being said or not. And I don't know if it's the end, to like Wes said, if it's the end of him being a superstar or not. I do think that he still is going to be a very productive player in this league for another few years. He could definitely still do that, but he's going to have to go out there on the court and prove it. And I, for one, hope that he can, because this is a Philly team that I think has done a pretty good job at loading up on talent now, and putting themselves in a position to where they can win some basketball games, whether Joel Embiid is healthy or not. And they've had to do that with what's happened over his career. But Joel definitely still makes that team better if he's healthy. And hopefully we get to see that this upcoming season.
Yeah, you both make fantastic points. Wes, you mentioned that it does seem like miraculous that he has reached the level, and he even sort of realizes that about himself, saying like, you don't go from learning basketball at 16 years old to being one of the best, the best player for a season in the NBA without a lot of hard work and a lot of luck and a lot of miracles that are happening. And yet still, that's what makes him a fascinating character, because there are so many things you can point to, sometimes little things that you were like, yes, all of those miracles, and you don't show up on time for team activities. And there are leadership questions. And that was one of the things that I found fascinating that I'd like to ask you two about. So it's great. This profile, he asks, Dotun asks Joel Embiid about all of these narratives and what he thinks about them. And so one of them is that he isn't a leader. And Joel Embiid responds this way: everybody leads in his own way. I lead on the court. Over the years, you also grow and you learn a lot. If you ask my teammates now, they'll tell you a way different story than my teammates a couple of years ago, because years ago, I was nowhere to be found. That to me it's fascinating, because, well, here's my question. Wes, can you lead on the court only, exclusively, and still lead an NBA basketball team?
The answer to that question is yes, but I'll say this about Joel Embiid. Leadership is a lot like jokes. If you have to explain the joke wasn't funny. If you have to explain why you're a leader, you're probably not a leader. People just either follow you or they don't. And with Joel Embiid, I don't think he is a leader. I think a key trait in leadership is communication with the front office, leading up, managing up, and managing down. And clearly Joel Embiid has a story. There's an anecdote in here where Joel Embiid has literally 10,000 missed text messages or something, and 1,000 missed phone calls. This is not a guy. And one of the through lines of this entire piece was just that he's not a very good communicator, and he's not a good partner with the people that he works for or works with. And I understand that from Joel Embiid's perspective. This profile does a really good job of kind of peeling back the layers on his trust issues and issues being vulnerable with people and bringing people close. And I get that. And I could be sympathetic to that, but I can also sit here and say, okay, well, you're probably not a leader. You're an incredible talent, but you're not the leader of a basketball team.
Haize.
Yeah, you need that guy who's going to rally the team together. You need that guy who's going to motivate. You need that guy who's going to do the locker room things. Being a leader on the court is perfectly fine. I'm a Chicago Bulls fan. We had that. Derrick Rose was our leader on the court, but Joakim Noah was really the leader of that locker room during that team. And I think you can have teams that have that balance, but I think there are times where they wanted to rely on Joel Embiid to be a leader, and he just didn't have it there. And that's fine. You got to come to that recognition. Not everybody's meant to be a leader. Just because you may be the most talented basketball player on the team doesn't mean you have the natural instincts or things needed to be a leader on the team. I think sometimes they've lacked that. I think that goes all the way back to the Jimmy Butler's time there. And, that's just something that I think that it's good that he recognizes. But, if you got to say you lead differently, the team has needed that. I think we've clearly seen that with the 76ers team at times where they've needed a leader and they just haven't had one.
And if I could jump in with one more point here. It's one thing to lead on the court, but if you're going to lead on the court, you have to lead off the court also. Your actions have to be consistent. And if you're showing up late to team meetings, showing up late to your own rehabs, showing up late to all these things, the things that he got called out for in that team meeting, it's really hard to then sit here and say, I'm a leader by example, which is essentially what he says by being a leader on the court. Being a leader on the court, if you're the best player, fine. The difference between Embiid and Derrick Rose, even, you poll people in the league, who are your favorite people in the league that you've ever been around? Two people come up all the time: Derrick Rose, Klay Thompson.
Yeah,
those guys were also, they weren't rally the troops, rah guys, but they were good communicators. They showed up on time. They did the work. They did all the things that really endeared them to their teammates.
Yeah, being a leader is not about what you do. It's about the trust that you instill in other people. And if you're not doing that off the court, I just have a hard time believing that you can actually lead on the court in that way. One more thing, and really a big part of this profile hinged around the relationship, even the current relationship, but the long relationship between Joel Embiid and a Sixers organization, and particularly a front office that has changed a lot underneath his feet. Let me read this on his knee injury last season. He says, the profile says, the uncertainty about his knee reignited old tensions between Embiid and the Sixers front office. After months of uncertainty, false starts, and recurrent swelling, Embiid couldn't take it anymore. In February, before a loss to the Milwaukee Bucks, Embiid told ESPN's Lisa Salters that he would need another surgery, which reportedly surprised the organization. Daryl Morey acknowledged that surprise in our meeting. If you don't want it, this is Joel Embiid. If you don't want to listen to me, then I have to find something else to make sure that I'm going to be listened to. When I told Lisa that, I think it was a cry for help. It feels like everybody refuses to acknowledge what's actually going on. Haize, when you read that, what do you think about the future for Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers and them being able to mend this relationship?
I mean, anything's possible. I mean, he's still there. I do think it is possible to mend it regardless of like what the future holds for Joel Embiid in his career. But it definitely it makes it sound bleak when you hear something like that. To say that it was a cry for help and people weren't listening, that to me sounds like that's like being stuck in a lease with the person you just broke up with, but you got 6 months left on that lease. That's what that sounded like to me.
And maybe you had already tried to break another lease in the past, because this is an issue that keeps coming up with Joel Embiid. There's another story in this profile about within the first couple of years of his career, he was trying to tell 76ers doctors and staff, which, like Doug pointed out, was a different front office, different medical staff. I think there's something wrong with my foot. It's not enough to just rehab it. And they ended up seeing a physician a year later, and that's exactly what turned out. And he ended up missing the first 2 years of his career because of it. And maybe was never right all the way since then because of that. Who knows? But yeah, these are the trust issues that I kind of went back to with Joel Embiid, and I understand it, right? You've been the face of this process, a process started by a front office that's no longer in charge. You've had a rotating cast of front office people, coaches, front office execs, all these things, and you're still there. And sometimes you've been led astray by people in the past who, again, according to him in this profile, maybe were more interested in the next 18 months as opposed to the next 18 years of Joel Embiid's life, because they just wanted to save their job. So this is a guy who has been closed off, is admittedly going to therapy to try to resolve some of those issues. Again, very sympathetic to what he's been going through.
You made the comparison, Haize, to the breaking of a lease when you've broken up with someone. I would make the comparison of when you're about to break up with someone and you have to go to your mutual friends, and before you go to them before you do the breakup, and you just sort of explain everything that's going on so that when the breakup happens, no one will think it was completely your fault, right? Like, that's what this feels like. That's why I asked the question about the future between Embiid and the Sixers, because I got to the end of this and I thought, I don't feel great about them continuing forward. It doesn't feel like that's where this necessarily landed, and it would be interesting to see how the organization responds, if they respond at all to some of the accusations in here. So, and if they do, we'll cover it here on Locked On NBA. But we have much more to get to coming up. Zion Williamson, will he be a part of the New Orleans Pelicans core moving forward? Locked On Pelicans host Jake Madison, not so sure, even though they just guaranteed his $39 million salary for next season. That's ahead on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can be. Whether you're saving up or planning something big, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch is not just a budgeting app. It's a full financial command center. It lets you track your investments, your accounts, your spending, and even plan for your future goals, all in one clean, easy-to-use app. That means less time stressing over your money and more time making it work for you. And if you share finances with someone like I do, Monarch makes it easy to all stay on the same page without using a bunch of awkward spreadsheets or missing any of those critical bills. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Zion Williamson's $39 million salary next season will be fully guaranteed after a deadline passed, and he is still a Pelican for now. That wasn't a given after the Pelicans made major front office changes. Is he still part of the core? That was the subject of a recent episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's listen to Jake Madison.
Really kind of been aggressively kind of changing this roster because I think they don't particularly like it, which says something about the level of these players and what we're seeing from them. So if that's going to be the case, is Zion part of the core? And I'm not sure the answer is yes. I'm not sure the answer is no either. I do think that if there was a great offer on the table for him, they would have traded him by now. And from talking to people around the league, that's kind of the prevailing feeling. He just doesn't seem to have massive value around the league right now. And while he can be such a transcendent player, and I've long said I will go down with the Zion Williamson ship, and you just kind of saw David Griffin go down with the Zion Williamson ship, trying to make it work around him. You know, at this point in his career, 6-7 years, like, it just hasn't come together and worked.
Wes, should Zion Williamson still be considered part of the core? And if not, what does he have to do this season to get back to that spot?
Well, he has to be part of the core because the Pelicans don't own their draft pick next year. So I don't know what their plan is, but their plan is obviously for Zion to carry them for however many games that he could be on the court. The Pelicans have put themselves in a pretty rough spot here. As Jake was saying, you look at some of the roster moves that they're making, and it makes you believe maybe they're planning on doing something else, maybe with a little bit of a longer term view. And then they trade their pick unprotected for 2026. Now, maybe they just simply don't care about that pick, but it would be a pretty bad look if that pick ended up being in the top 5, which is where it certainly can be, especially if Zion misses more time. But Zion's really the only guy who could pull them out of that spot. An organization that makes that kind of trade tends to think that they're going to be in the playoffs. And if Zion's not pulling them into the playoffs, I don't know who is. We're voting on our NBA top 100 here pretty soon. How many players on the Pelicans roster are going to crack the top 100? It might only be one, and it might only be Zion.
I agree with everything you said. I'm going to offer just a different perspective on here just because I agree so much with what you said. If they offered that, they did. They offered the 2026 pick, which is still going to be a very deep draft, to get Derek Queen. To me, that tells me that they may view Derek Queen as that important to have to the roster because maybe Zion isn't part of their future. They're sure that he's part of the core now, but who's to say that that's going to keep that's going to keep being the case there. You got Derek Queen in there, who's a guy that I don't know if he's going to fit with Zion, but he's a ball dominant center, more modern big that I like a lot. You still got Yves Missy there. I like. You got Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Jordan Poole in here as well, like Jeremiah Fears, who you just drafted. I feel like this is a roster that I'm not saying is going to be a playoff team without Zion at all, but I can see the vision that if you do move on from Zion and you expect to get a nice amount back for him, that this may be the roster and core that you're going with going forward. So I can see a world in which maybe they don't view Zion as part of the long-term core. They have him here now. If he can stay healthy, if he can keep his head on basketball, great. You can be here and we can keep building around you. But I think the comments from Joe Dumars over the course of this is like they're trying to motivate Zion. But I do think in the back of their head, there's this, if this does not work, how good are we in a place to where we can shift our focus away from Zion enough? And maybe they feel like this roster is the roster to do that.
So I don't know if I'm breaking any kind of embargo here, but Wes, since you brought it up, Locked On Pelicans did submit their players for consideration in the NBA Top 100. Zion Williamson with a question mark next to it. Jake Madison adding a question mark is player number 1, followed by Trey Murphy, and then Herb Jones, then Jordan Poole. So those are the top 4. Submitted a few others as well, but so there's your top 4 core in New Orleans. And I just wonder if he's in a little bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation as in terms of staying with the core, because I think if he plays too well and they do make the playoffs, there's a scenario in which New Orleans says, okay, now we can do the trade. We tried to do the trade, couldn't do it. And if he doesn't play enough games, then the next season of his contract is not guaranteed. So the New Orleans Pelicans still have a couple of outs if they're not all about the Zion experience. Let's move quickly to the Detroit Pistons and Locked On Pistons, where host and professor for a day, Cukk Hill, is handing out his grade on the Pistons offseason. Let's hear that.
I give him a C+. The reason why I give him a C+ is I don't think it was a bad offseason. Like, I don't think they failed. I don't think they went backwards. I think at the very least they stayed the same. I also don't know if you can make a strong argument that just from the offseason, I don't know if you can make an argument that they've gotten better. Like, I think you can make an argument that they basically are the same. They basically are the same team as they were last year. You can maybe make an argument they're slightly better. You could maybe make an argument they're slightly worse, just based off off-season movement. The Pistons taking the next step, win-loss-wise in the regular season, will all come down to their young guys. If their young guys take a step forward, they'll win more games this year. If they don't, you might see some, you might see them fall backwards a little bit. But it's all going to be about the young guys.
All right, Wes Haize, 60 seconds to each of you. Did the Pistons do enough this season to make sure that Cade Cunningham has enough to get further in the playoffs this season than last? Wes, we'll start with you.
I think they clearly got better. I would disagree with Cukk vehemently here. They lost some guys, right? They lost Tim Hardaway Jr. They lost Simone Fontecchio. Obviously, they lose Malik Beasley. They lost Dennis Schroeder, who was there for half of a season after the trade deadline. But they added Caris LeVert and they added Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson is a much more consistent shooter over the course of his career than Malik Beasley, who's coming off of a career season. But what Duncan Robinson can do off the move, off the catch, a little bit of more playmaking than I think Beasley provides, I think that's going to be an improvement right away. And then Caris LeVert is a home run for them. And I feel like Pistons fans are just overlooking the Caris LeVert addition. I would argue that the Hawks won the DeAndre Hunter Caris LeVert trade. LeVert was awesome for Atlanta down the stretch last season. We just don't think about it because they didn't go into the playoffs very long. But LeVert is going to give you a lot of things that didn't exist on this roster last season. And then you also have Jaden Ivey coming back, who I'm going to consider an addition as well. You get improvement from everybody down the line. Ron Holland is having a nice summer league for them too. I think they're going to be better. I think their offseason makes them better too.
Haize, final word.
I think they made the right veteran acquisitions to support the growth of their young players, and that's exactly where they need to be. To Wes's point, you're getting Jaden Ivey back. Jalen Duren, Ron Holland are 21 and 20 years old, so you're going to hope that those guys take a step. And Cade Cunningham took a huge step last year to start looking like a star. So, I think that they had a really good offseason. I would feel even better about it if they were able to keep Malik Beasley. They weren't, but I still think that they've made really smart acquisitions, and I think they definitely got better in the East.
And if the Suns have taught us anything, sometimes it's the things that you don't do that matter more than the things that you do. If you like what you heard today, subscribe to Locked On NBA wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube. Thanks to Wes for sitting in for Matt and Haize for their expertise every day. Thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen. Make your second listen Locked On NBA Game Night. It's every Summer League game every night. We only have just a few nights left of Summer League. It's on this feed on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. Enjoy tonight's Summer League action. Be kind to each other, and we'll see you right back here to wrap up the week on Locked On NBA.